Get yourself in the lotus position, because I've got no plan, no pretense, and definitely no bypassing. I'm Josh Connolly, and this will probably be dysfunctional. Okay, so we're here with a slightly different looking podcast today, if you're watching on YouTube, to what you might be used to, because I've got a sick child at home, so I can't be in the office today. My daughter was up being sick all night last night, so she's fine now, but she can't go to school. So I sort of slung this area together in my living room, and it's meant that the morning has not started in remotely the way that I wanted it to start. So it's going to be a slightly different podcast, not just in the way that it looks, but I thought I always collate all of the questions that come in through my Instagram mainly, and you can send me questions there for this podcast whenever you like. And then I collate them and normally try and answer one or two of them at the end of each podcast, but that's not always been possible in the last few podcasts because I sort of gone deep on other stuff. And so I thought today, though this will be a slightly shorter podcast, I thought I could answer some questions. Now, most of them, are probably all of them that I'll go through, are around growing up in dysfunction or with any kind of toxic parent. So most of the questions are going to be on that. By the way, just quickly, it's worth me saying before I get into the questions that I have opened up entry to Deeper You. So if you're listening to this before February the 24th in 2025, you can sign up to my latest 6-week program and you'll find all the details for that. In fact, I'll put them in the show notes below. It's a program so that you can connect with and have a deeper, more joyful relationship with your inner child. And there's lots of live sessions involved in that. So come and have a look. If you're not aware of that, come and have a look. It's on my website. I'll put the link in the show notes. And yeah, we normally get a couple of 100 or 100 to 200 people on these programs when I do them. And they're a really, really good community space to come together with like-minded people, if nothing else. So I'm going to jump in and do some of these questions and we'll see where we land. Okay, this is one that I often get like this. It says, how do I stop hating myself for not being the child they wanted me to be? It's such a deep question because you can hear in the question the impact that growing up with this kind of parent can have on children. And just before I answer the question, it's worth me saying actually, I'm seeing there's a growing group of angry, emotional parents that have been estranged from their children that are turning up on my content. There's starting to be articles written, and I want to do a podcast about some of these articles actually. There was a radio show recently in the UK where they talked about these poor parents that have been estranged from their children and how hard it is for them and all of that kind of stuff. And though I know and recognize that there's always complex reasons for estrangement, and all families are different, I think it's really important to highlight that a toxic, horrible parent that I'm talking about will be emboldened by these kind of conversations. Now, I'm not saying that those conversations shouldn't be had. If you're estranged from a child and you're not a toxic parent, right, for whatever reason, you should have your moment, you should have your voice, and you should be raising awareness of that. And recognize the toxic, horrible people that I'm talking about are going to infiltrate them spaces when you create them. And they're going to play the victim, and them spaces will be full of them. And I've had some of them land on my page. I try and interact with them out of curiosity, more than anything. Sometimes just because I'm triggered and I want to make them look fucking stupid because they're trying to make me look stupid. That's just the truth. That's the reality. But I do try and interact with them for understanding, and actually I'll make sure I bring that to another podcast, because some of the ways that they interact is it's a really good way of highlighting how these people kind of emotionally abuse you without you perhaps knowing or being able to recognize that's exactly what's going on. So to come back to the question, how do I stop hating myself for not being the child they wanted me to be? Well, let's first break that question down and ask, what type of child would a toxic and horrible parent want you to be? And they would want you to be the golden child, really. They'd want you to be an extension of them. They would want you to be at their every beck and call. They would want you to be a shoulder for them to cry on, even when you're far too young to be a shoulder to cry on. They would want you to hold them up in high regard, irrespective of the ways that they behave. They would want you to act in perfection when you're out in public so that people view them in a certain way. And so in many ways, when we talk about how do you stop hating yourself for not being the person, the child that they wanted you to be, I would argue that you should love yourself for not being the child that they want you to be. The unfortunate reality is when you're dealing with one of the people that we're talking about is that they don't want a child that's easy to love. They want a child that finds it easy to be manipulated, abused, and be an extension of what they are. So, though I understand why you might feel like you hate yourself as a result of growing up with a parent like this, I would argue that you should love yourself for that. Totally understand why you feel the way that you do, and recognize that that is an impact and a result of the way that they've treated you, rather than a reflection of who you are. And sorry for those of you that are watching on YouTube at the moment, but I need to just check. I had a sudden fear that I hadn't hit record, but it turns out that we have, so we're good. So next question. Why do I feel like I have to earn their love even as an adult? Again, this is another good question, because I think that even as an adult part's important, right? Because the reality is that when you are a child, you should, probably the only time you should receive completely unconditional love from a parent. They should love you in your happiness, loneliness, jealousy, joyfulness, rage. Of course, parents are going to get angry with you. They're going to have to lay boundaries, and they're going, parenting's hard. Parents will make mistakes. They're going to be moments when they can't show up in the way that they're supposed to. But ultimately, it should always come back to this unconditional love. It should come back to loving you into finding who you truly are. If you've grown up with a toxic, and arguably even with just highly dysfunctional parents, you've probably grown up with quite conditional love. So you will have grown up literally being trained and taught to earn their love, because their love, or their expression of what they are calling love, right? Their sharing of admiration and respect for you will have only really been used as a weapon. So their love will have been used as a weapon against you. It would have been used as a way it would have been withheld and then showered when you did what they need you to do, which would probably have been somehow keep them at the center of the universe, and at their every beck and call. That's the reality. Okay, let's go to another question. And again, apologies for those that are watching on YouTube, but we're going to do a little bit of a wipe in the camera because I'm now fearful of that. And, you could tell I'm at home. Do you know what, right? When my routine is slightly messed up in the way that it has today, it gives me a headache. I find it really difficult to settle into the day. I start worrying about stuff that I shouldn't be worrying about. There's a sense of ease and comfort that comes with the routines and the processes that I go through on a day-to-day basis. And when I don't go through them, I feel quite out of control. I worry about stuff like wiping the lens of the camera, or have I hit record, all these kind of things. And I promised you that I would never edit these, and I would always leave them unedited. And so that's the pros and cons of doing that, I'm afraid, if you're watching. Okay, let's go to another question. This is a good one. Why do I always second guess myself because of the things they said to me? I'll say this quite clearly. One of the, what do we call it? Clues, let's call it that. One of the biggest clues that you are in some kind of dysfunctional or even abusive relationship is that you spend a lot of your time questioning yourself, questioning your reality, and trying to work out if you're going crazy. You'll find yourself saying things like, did that really happen? Was it that bad? You'll start thinking to yourself, I need to start writing this down. I must be overreacting. I must be looking into this too much. And that's a surefire sign. Not always, I should say. I say surefire sign. It doesn't necessarily absolutely mean it. There could be lots of different reasons you feel confused, and some of them could be your own internal dysfunction and stuff as well, right? But if you are confused a lot and constantly questioning your reality, then I would say that there's a good chance you're in a dysfunctional relationship, at least, potentially abusive as well. A toxic and horrible person will actively try to get you to question your reality all of the time. Yeah, they will do different things to keep you walking on eggshells, to keep you walking around not quite sure what's going on, always questioning your reality. It's a real good way of them keeping and gaining and holding on to control over you. If you can never be quite sure of what you've experienced or what you put your finger on, then you're easy to manipulate. You're easy to control. So the question says, why do I always second guess myself? You second guess yourself because in a dysfunctional or toxic relationship, it's that way by design. It is literally that way by design. Right, I'm going to take a breath because I can feel, again, I can feel a level of anxiety is not the word, but I feel a level of like I'm not fully connected to my body and what I'm doing. So let's take, if you're listening, you can do this with me. A lot of people tell me that they really enjoy when I do this because they take them with me. So we're going to take 3 breaths. We're going to go in through the nose and out through the mouth, and you can follow me if you want. Good. 3 nice breaths there. Just brings you back into your body a little bit. Gets you going again. And I've always wanted this podcast to be a little bit like a voice note, yeah? Like I've always wanted it to just be like a mate's voice note in your a rundown and an opinion on stuff. So it's funny, once you hit record, I feel like I don't want to be giving you too much moments of silence. So my brain has to move really, really quick. And sometimes that can send me into feeling certain kind of ways. All right. Let's have a look. Why? Oh, this is an interesting question. Why do they make me feel like I owe them my happiness? Why do they make me feel like I owe them my happiness? It's an interesting feeling. Let's try and think about this for a moment. Why would you feel like you would owe anybody your happiness? I guess if you're dealing with somebody that's always playing the martyr, a byproduct of that is you'll always feel like you're never quite as happy as they should be. Because a toxic parent, right, will often say all of these things. Do you know how hard it was to raise you? Do you know how difficult your birth was? Do you know what it's like to be, you were an awful child? Do you know what it was like raising you? Oh, when you were little, and they'll do it like this. Oh, when you were little, you were so hard. You were so hard. And I just, all by myself. So they're always trying to play the martyr. So I guess like a byproduct of that would be that you got a sense that you can never really quite make them happy, right? When you're around them and you're just being yourself and you're trying your best to be happy, when they're sort of feeding you all of this narrative of how hard you were and how horrible it was to raise you, you can see how that would impact you and make you feel that way. And look, they would always do, like, they'd always push, they always want more. You're never going to be enough. You're never going to be enough for a toxic parent. Oh, here's a good one. Why does every compliment they give me feel like a trap? Look, I always say that. Look, there's a sliding scale of this, and I do think it's important for me to maybe highlight that all of the time, right? But if you're this top end, toxic, horrible person that I'm talking about, yeah, the reason every compliment that they give you feels like a trap is because it is a trap, right? They will either compliment you or do something nice for you. They might buy you something, gift you something, and it's all so that they can weaponize it against you. Now, some people might say, look, I think that they do it, that they have a little moment where they break through and then they are nice, and they don't necessarily do it so that they can use it against you, right? That's not why they're doing it in the moment. I'm not so sure, man. Listen, I don't think it's black and white. I don't think they're like scheming like I'm going to do this and then hold it against them. But I do think that they only ever think about things through the lens of what it does for themselves. So in that moment, they probably think that it's going to make them feel good about who they are, and then there'll be payoff on it as well. It's always weaponized against you. You know when they do something nice to you, or when they say something nice to you, if they compliment you, you know that when they're horrible to you down the line, they'll be like, I complimented you earlier. Don't forget I told you how amazing you looked. If they do something nice for you, they're going to bring it up all of the time. I bet, like, they also let you know how fucking hard they worked for it as well, don't they? They'll do a lot of that sort of like, like, they're always, a toxic parent's always talking about how much money things are that they've just bought you and how hard they had to work to get it for you and all of that kind of stuff. So again, some of these questions, the answers are, the reason it makes you feel like that is because it's like that by design. That's what these parents are trying to do. How can I stop feeling like I'm the family scapegoat? Again, a little bit like I answered the question earlier. I would say don't try to stop feeling like the family scapegoat. You don't feel like you're the family scapegoat. You probably are the family scapegoat. So I would almost like, you have to get to a point where you go, do you know what? I'm the family scapegoat because I'm the one that's willing to be honest. I'm the one that's willing to speak truth. And I'm the one that's going to break generational patterns. So I would argue that. So rather than trying to get yourself to stop feeling like you are the family scapegoat, accept that you probably are the family scapegoat and fucking lean into that and say, do you know what? I'm fucking proud to be the family scapegoat. I think I've done a podcast in the past that was called I'd Rather Be the Family Scapegoat. And if you've grown up in dysfunction, I think it should be a fucking badge of honor that you're the scapegoat. As horrible as it is, and don't get me wrong, I mean, to get to where you are, it's a horrible experience. It's not nice. But in a dysfunctional family, if you've been unfortunate to grow up enough to grow up in one, being the family scapegoat is exactly what you fucking want to be. You want to be the black sheep. You want to be the scapegoat because it means you're fucking doing something right. It means you're the truth seeker. And so I would actually say fucking shout out to you. There's a few of them out there, the family scapegoats, and they're normally the fucking best people, you know, the truth seekers and the people that will change the world for the better. So that's what I would say to you. Why do I feel like I'm grieving someone who's still alive? Some of these questions, by the way, people are sent in like with a bit of like detail to the story and stuff. I do pull out the question and simplify it, just because even if people feel really comfortable to share some of their story and their journey, I would hate for it to get heard by their family, and then there's always a payoff and there's always a backlash. So I just sort of anonymize them. Is that the word? I make them anonymous entirely. What was the question? Why do I feel like I'm grieving someone who's still alive? Because you are. Because it's living grief. People don't talk about the loss of a living person. I know a lot about living grief through the work that I do for children of alcoholics and addicts. That's a living grief. That's somebody that's still alive that you have to grieve the absence of because they can't be in your life in the way that they're supposed to be. In some ways, and I don't think we should get into comparison, but in some ways that's harder than grief itself, because they're out there living. In some ways they're out there still hurting you. In some ways they're every now and then they're reaching out to try and act as if, you know, something's going to be different this time. And ultimately, I don't think it ever is different. With a lot of these people, they don't change. And so grief itself is complicated and messy. Living grief is really complicated and messy. And so you are grieving. That's exactly what you're doing. You're grieving the idea of a parent that you know everybody deserves and that you've never had. I think it's a real hard realization. I think what a lot of people do, by the way, is they live most of their life trying to convince themselves that they're just like any other parent. And you get a lot of people that only in their adulthood start to realize, wow, I've grown up in some real bad dysfunction here. And it's not easy. It's not easy. How do I explain my decision to go no contact to other family members who say I'm being selfish? Yeah, man, this is why it's really hard, because like my initial thought is to want to be emotive and say, well, they're fucking in the wrong as well, you know, and if they can't see it and they want to scapegoat you and make you out to be the problem, then shame on them. And I think in some ways I would say shame on them, but I would also add that what I've learned and what I realize is that even a lot of good people who I would see as decent, sound people, would give that kind of advice. They want you to be the better person. Somebody commented on a post of mine recently and said, being the bigger person is often a disguise for self-abandonment. And it's so true. It's so true. People say be the bigger person and let bygones be bygones, and all of that shit is actually trying to stop you being the bigger person. The bigger person is about putting yourself first and doing what's right for you. So I would just, to answer the question, how do I explain my decision to go to no contact with family members that say I'm being selfish, is stand in your truth. That's all you can do. You can stand in your truth and speak the truth and say, this is what I've experienced and this is the only thing that I can do for my well-being. And maybe you want to go and speak to the other parent. I mean, listen, the reality is that when they go and speak to that parent, the parent will play the fucking martyr, right? They're the expert at manipulating that family member to make them seem like you're the fucking being the unreasonable one, you're the crazy one. So, you know, in many ways you can't win, which is not great. It's not nice. So yeah, stand in your truth, and stand in your power, stand in the reality of what you're doing. And if they can't see that, then that's on them. That's on them. And listen, on that question, I want to say something, because this is really important to me, right? A lot of people think that, in fact, let me say this. I'm sick and tired of people saying that talking about abuse is ripping families apart, as if it's not abuse that's ripping families apart. Talking about toxic parents, talking about family abuse is the very thing that brings families back together, right? If the toxic parent is unwilling to change or do any kind of work on themselves, to take any kind of accountability, to try and restore the situation in any way, that's on them. But the way that you break the cycle is by seeing the truth. It's not by sweeping it all under the carpet and just, you know, giving down and bowing down to toxicity and abuse. That doesn't save families. What truly saves families and gives future families the opportunity to live a functional, happy life where you stay together, where siblings stay together. The only way you can do that when there's been a history of heightened dysfunction and abuse is by talking openly about it. And if people don't want to join that table and have that proper conversation, it's them. They're the ones that are breaking families apart, not me, not this work, not talking openly about this. And anybody that says that I'm pushing people to go no contact, find anywhere where I've ever said that, all I've done is talk about the truth of people's experiences. A lot of people want to sweep it under the carpet and pretend the ones that pull it out from under the carpet and say, let's finally break free from this. They want to scapegoat them as being the bad ones. You are the bad one for wanting to sweep it under the carpet. And while I'm here, I will say this, like the ways that some of these people come and comment to me, and when I interact with them, they take no accountability. They do it in a twisted, manipulative kind of way. Can I give you an example? There was one woman that come on my content and was like, spat this bile of abuse at me. You're this and you're that, and you're splitting families apart. You blame your parents for everything. And so I interacted with them, and then they come back and it was more bile. I said, because they were following me. I was like, if you think this, why are you following me? Because I want to keep up to date with the bile that's being spat by you people. And so I could see clearly, right, your kids ain't talking to you. They ended up DMing me, this person. And I was like, because I said, come on my platform. If you're like worried about what my followers are hearing, come and talk about it. Come and tell me why I'm so wrong. You can do it to all of my followers. If you're worried about doing it on a live, let's do it on a fucking Zoom, and then I'll share it with my followers and the truth will prevail. Then they came in my DMs and they started trying to act as if they're just a nice person who's, things have gone a bit awry. And then so I said, can you see if you land on my page talking in the way that you did that it's going to upset people? And their response was, and this is manipulation, right? I was angry, and I can see how coming in with a different opinion would be like coming into a pack of wolves with the type of people that are watching your content. And I thought, but that's trying to act like you're taking accountability. That's trying to act like you're taking some responsibility, but you're not. What you've done is gone, okay, yeah, I was silly for having a different opinion to all of you people that have a certain opinion. And it's like, so I said, no, that's not what happened. I'm talking about the way that you spoke, the things that you said, and they will always, and then they went, straight to, you're trying to make out like I'm crazy now. And then they went into how awful and horrible their life is. Throughout the whole thing, they just avoided the accountability. And this is what happens. This is how they do it. And then so I guarantee you, if I put that as public, which I wouldn't, because somebody did it in the DMs, I wouldn't put it exactly public with identifying information, anything like that. But a lot of people would read it and say that I'm being unreasonable, and it sounds like she's going through a lot, and it sounds like she's got a lot on. And I'm like, that's exactly what toxic people do. And I am here for supporting people and being compassionate to people that have been through the mire, that have really, really been through it. That's what I do. That's my work. Yeah. And I know that toxic, horrible, coercive people, yeah, use that as well. So you have to sometimes call it out and go, no, I'm not going to be pulled in by your emotional way of framing this. I can see what's going on, and I'll fucking call it out. Okay, I've got enough time for one more question. Okay, we're going to go with this. How do I stop myself becoming just like them? How do I stop myself becoming just like my toxic parent? How would you know that you're just like them? I think you'd know that you're just like them if you're never willing to take accountability. So how do you not become like your toxic parent? It's not don't mess up. It's not don't ever manipulate anybody. Don't ever be angry with anybody. Don't ever act in a narcissistic way, because I guarantee you, I would argue all of you will act like that. There will be times when you come round and you think, oh my God, I've just been like them. How did that happen? The difference is, what does your toxic parent never do? They never, ever take accountability. They never, ever sit down and be willing to take accountability, be willing to hear from the person that they've hurt, to put their emotions to the side for a moment and accept responsibility and accountability. So the way that you don't become your toxic parent simply is by making sure that you are accountable. You will mess up, you will make mistakes. Work on yourself as much as you can. Do the work. Try and be a better person, right? But don't get caught up in that fucking over-spiritualization of shit that you see out there. that wants you to believe that as long as you do all this work properly, you'll never be horrible, you'll never have a bad feeling. That's bullshit. We're all dysfunctional to some degree. We all mess up. We all do stupid things. We all wake up and go, oh my God, how did I get here? Why did I do that? You've all got that stuff going on over here that you hope people don't know about. That's part of being human. That's the stuff nobody wants to talk about. I'll be truthful with you. I talk the truth, as much as I can. That's what I'm telling you. The difference is with a truly toxic person, the difference is that they will never, ever accept accountability. Work towards accepting accountability and you'll be able to safely say that you're not like your toxic parent. Oh! Feels like a good space to end this. I started very late today, so it's meant that we can only do like half an hour here. But I had the opportunity to wake up today and just call this off and say there's going to be no podcast this week. But that's just not who I am. Who am I? I'm a chronic people pleaser. No, I don't know. I'm just happy that I got a podcast out today. It's nice to do it in a slightly different setting. Had to rearrange our living room somewhat. We're about to have work done here, so it wasn't easy to even do that either. So, but we know one thing to be very true, and it's always true on this podcast, and that is that I am Josh Connolly, and this was definitely dysfunctional. I did tell you it would be dysfunctional, so thank you for sticking around till the end here. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, then please help me to grow Dysfunctional by sharing with your friends on social media. You can find me at Josh_FFW. And then wherever you're listening to this or watching this, please make sure that you've liked and subscribed, left us a 5-star review and a comment if your platform allows it. And I'll see you on the next one.